no ownership again.
They're at the FSGA. I'm assuming that's why. Or they were.
We're gonna buy some awards this year.
I hope not. It's such a dumb system. Yeah, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Awesemo.com NBA Strategy Show, presented by No House Advantage. I'm Dave Loughran on the Twitters at Laffy_D. Hit me up, give me a follow, say what's up. Tell me I'm an idiot. I don't care. LOUGHY_D. Joined by Joshua Engleman. Hit the man up as well at Josh Engleman on the Twitters. Here to break down a 2-game basketball slate tonight and recap a little bit of the nonsense that we saw on Monday evening between the Bucks and the Brooklyn Nets. My God, what a disastrous performance that was from Milwaukee.
It was just over immediately. Before it even got started, this game was completely in the books. I didn't even realize how aggressive it was, and then it was just done.
Over.
It was just done. KD was plus, well, I mean, obviously, so was Kyrie in this case. They played the entire first quarter. They're plus 17 in the first quarter. This game was just done and dusted. They led by 49 at one point. I mean, every single quarter had some sort of massive beating, a 14-4 run, an 8-0 run, and a 5-0 run, a 10-1 run in the third quarter, an 18-0 run in the fourth quarter. Every single quarter, Milwaukee just bent over for it. It was rough.
And I said it yesterday. I like the Bucks, Josh. I thought the Bucks could make a statement here. Not even a statement. Just say, all right, you have no James Harden. We just got smoked in game one. Now, all we have to do is not be as terrible as we were in game one. Now, they also need to not allow 50+% three-point shooting, 21 threes to Brooklyn. They need to get to the basket. They need to get fouls, right? They need to get free throws. Sorry. They had 7 free throw attempts with less than a minute left in the game. 7 total free throw attempts with less than a minute left in the game. All of them were Giannis Antetokounmpo. He made 2 of them. Like Chris Middleton, turnovers galore. Was started off 0 for 6. Like this team, I have trouble even articulating how bad of a performance that was, with a real opportunity to make an impact game, steal one in Brooklyn, and go back to Milwaukee with no James Harden in the first two outings. I was shocked to see how bad they were. And let me just say one thing. All of the "I told you the Bucks were awful" people. All right, fine, you win, but you don't win in the sense that you look at this and say, like, if you tell me you saw 2 blowouts coming with no James Harden, you're full of shit. That's all I'm saying. Like, and someone had said to me, Josh, they're like, well, wouldn't that make their argument stronger? It was a legitimate question. He said, wouldn't that make their argument stronger that they still lost without Harden? Like, if you really think that roster should lose by 40 points to a Nets team without James Harden, then you just have never watched basketball, no matter how little you believe in Giannis Antetokounmpo to take this team to a finals.
Yeah, I worry a little bit that we excessively overreact in both directions to something like this. One of these teams were going to lose this series, and no matter what, the team that lost the series, we were going to make up, like, maybe not make up, but like we're going to say a bunch of negative stuff about their performance in it by default, just from being in this series. I don't think that anything has really changed, and that they're probably the second or third best team in the East. This is just going really poorly. They can't do anything correct offensively. It doesn't appear that they can do anything correct defensively. Everything just looks bad. And yet, this is the exact look. I'm not justifying it. I don't think that they are in any good shape whatsoever. But we were already talking about, where's Paul George going to end up? Is Kawhi Leonard going to end up on the Heat? They won that series. They were down 2-0. Like, I think we jumped to conclusions a little bit too quickly, no matter how bad things look early. I still think Milwaukee's really good. I still think they're one of the best teams in the East. It's possible they're running into just an absolute juggernaut. We might look back at this series a little bit differently if Brooklyn does this to everybody. They just become so good offensively that they run through everything that gets put in front of them. We might see that, and this is going to make a Milwaukee loss look not nearly as bad as it seems right in this moment. But coming out of game 2, good God, does it look bad.
But yes, for sure. But here's what I'm saying. I'm with you that we would have been saying negative things about whichever team that came out of this series as a loser. I just never, and the series isn't over yet, but it feels like it. I just never anticipated saying this many negative things about the Bucks after 2 games. You can agree with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, no, I never saw them just getting completely body bagged in the second game. I didn't see them losing with so handily with James Harden playing 45 seconds
in the whole series so far.
It's nuts. It's insane, truly man. Nuts.
I do not understand any of this, but when it comes down to it, we're here to talk about basketball. We're here to break everything down, and we can only give you what's in front of our faces and what past data, even though there's some people in chat that would suggest past data is a bad thing, Josh, and you have to use future data in order to get your plays. But
those people would have also picked the Heat to beat the Bucks in the first round series.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, we got Atlanta, Philly today. We have the Clippers, Utah. Before we dive into that, though, Phoenix in a game that was really fun through the first half. I ended up passing out. I had to get some sleep. There's just no way I was making it through that. Get up and super early in the morning. Couldn't do it. I tried. Couldn't do it. They end up winning by like 17 points.
Got out of hand late. They just pulled away. Phoenix is well, I guess it's probably a little bit of combination of both. Denver's defense just a little too leaky right now. No surprises there. Phoenix's offense ultra efficient for the game yesterday. And just a quality performance across all of the starters for Phoenix. Super balanced, whether it was Booker, Ayton, Paul, Bridges. You got a little bit of everything from everybody. And all 4 of those guys, like in a weird way, couldn't miss. Booker, 8 of 12. DeAndre Ayton, 9 for 13. Paul, 8 for 14. Mikal Bridges, 8 of 12. Like, if you're going to be shooting like that, you're going to win most of your games by default.
Yeah, that is the truth. That is the truth. But here we are. And now we talk about 2 games for today's Tuesday slate, 7:30 tip-off, 10 p.m. tip-off. The Atlanta Hawks and the Philadelphia 76ers. Before we do, though, hit that thumbs up. I know many of you jump in here. The first thing you do is hit that. It's greatly appreciated. And subscribe to the channel. You haven't subscribed yet, go ahead, hit that subscribe. If you hate us, if you hate it, and you realize you've made an awful decision, just unsubscribe. You never have to hear from us again. I don't think you'll want to, but it's an option. It's an easy option. And you can rid yourselves of Awesemo and Loughran and Josh quickly, just as quickly as you put us into your lives. But we're trying to reach that 60K mark heading into football season. It's going to be here sooner than you know it. So subscribe, hit the thumbs up. We'll dive into it. So number 1, the Atlanta Hawks are 6-point dogs in this one at Wells Fargo Center, full capacity stadium, 223.5 total. Now, I think I told you before, I hit the Sixers at -4 right as this line dropped a couple days ago, which means they'll surely lose this one again. Because whenever I beat the closing line and feel great about it, it's just, you know how it goes, right?
100%, yes.
Yeah. So you beat the closing line, you're like, man, I made a good play here. Sometimes it just doesn't matter. But the last game was really, really odd in the sense that the fourth quarter looked like the Philadelphia 76ers were the best team in the league and the Hawks didn't belong in the postseason. The first and third quarter looked like they were evenly matched, and the second quarter looked like Philly was the worst 1 seed to ever play in the NBA, right? So it's hard to take away much from this outside of the fact that there was no consistency throughout the 48 minutes. And that Philly probably does not want to drop a game 2 at home to the Atlanta Hawks and go into Atlanta down 0-2 as the number 1 seed.
No, this is a big one. I don't even know what I think of this series. If this is going back to Atlanta and Philly's down 2-0, it just feels like Philly wins this game by default. Yet at the same time, I expected Milwaukee to show up yesterday, and that one ended almost immediately. So what the hell do I know? I do think, like, this could be a really nice Trae Young spot once again. Luckily, he's kind of overpriced on FanDuel, so that kind of helps. I'm really excited to see this game. I know that I won't see any of Clippers Jazz starting at 10 o'clock, so I don't even have to worry about that one. But I'm fascinated by this series. I'm fascinated to see what Atlanta can do. And more than anything, I'm just curious to see what happens like, let's say the Sixers, I don't want to do this to you, but like, let's say the Sixers drop this series. We see the Bucks get
I could see it, by the
worked. Way. Yeah. Oh, it's a 50-50 series at this point in time. It wouldn't be crazy at all. Say Philly gets dumped here. We know the Bucks get dumped early. Let's say the Jazz beat the Clippers. We know we had the Blazers at home already. The Lakers are at home. I feel like we could be shuffling a lot of deck chairs this offseason with teams trying to get a little different. Like, you're going to hear nonstop, oh, should Philly trade Tobias Harris for CJ McCollum? Try to mix some of those things up. What can you do? Can Dame Lillard get traded anywhere? What can the Lakers do to improve? Who has to get removed from the Bucks to change that sort of setup? Because these teams aren't going to make as deep of a run as we were expecting, there could be some craziness in the offseason. That's what I'm looking forward to most coming out of these types of games. What happens in the offseason for next year?
I'm looking forward to it too. I'd also like the Sixers to take the W here, and I still think they do. But the playoffs are unpredictable. They really are, because this is going to sound stupid, but I've seen a lot of games, and Josh, you could tell me I'm dumb here, and I would honestly just almost, in a sense, be like, yeah, you're right, because it's not really quantifiable in a sense. Unless you're watching the games, you're saying, all right, there have just been spots where some of these teams have looked totally uninspired. I watched Milwaukee not even try to close out beyond the 3-point line yesterday. I watched the 76ers just feeding open corner threes to the Atlanta Hawks. What bothers me is the Sixers on the season are the best fourth quarter team in the league. If you've watched them, and I've watched almost every game, they smother teams in the fourth quarter. And they have the personnel to do so. Like, very much so, they have the players to do it. Why is it? And I'm not saying you had to play with that intensity for 4 straight quarters, but why is it that you don't put the clamps on until late in the game? I understand you have to change some things up, but if you play with some level of intensity, that game is never a 26-point game.
You would think that's the case. And yeah, I don't know. I don't really know the answer. I'm with you. Like, it's not quantifiable, but yeah, sometimes you just gotta, you would think getting smacked in the face so quickly out of the gate would wake you up, but it didn't. It didn't.
No, they fell back asleep.
You just kept getting smacked and smacked and smacked again. So yeah. I don't know. I'll tell you what, they better wake up right out of the gate here. They're going to be down 2-0 heading to Atlanta.
Yep, they absolutely are. And I'm not really looking forward to it. But I think this game is actually really fun for I think this is fun for DFS purposes, because last game, and it was a shooting gallery in many instances. The game saw 242 combined points, right? Soared over the total. And I'm sorry, 252 combined points in that one, well over the total. So let's kick it off with the Hawks. They're 6-point dogs. Trae Young saw a lot of Danny Green in the first half of that game, and needless to say, it went well for him. I think he had 26 first half points, finished with 39. The Hawks just shot brilliantly from 3 all day long. It's hard to see them maintaining that pace, but Trae Young's going to come out and presumably start gunning again on a slate where you've got, and as I always ask you this, right? Embiid is questionable. I assume he plays. Kawhi Leonard, Trae Young, Paul George. Those are your only high-priced guys. There's no Giannis. There's no Durant. There's no Jokic on this slate, right? There's no more Lillard. No. What do we do with Trae Young, and how does he stack up against these other top-priced guys, of which there aren't that many big-time high-priced options?
Today is a very, very difficult slate. We ran through crunches and stuff on the process show this morning. Pay-up options are kind of hard to justify. Only Joel Embiid is a 5-digit salary on DraftKings. Trae Young is 9,200 on DK. That price looks great to me. He is my preferred pay-up option on the slate, just given that price tag. We saw him play more minutes in game 1, so he's sort of priced as if he's only playing 34 to 36 minutes like he had been doing. Now it doesn't seem to be the case. I think 38 to 40 is a more realistic scenario. On FanDuel, though, he's 10-2. And my immediate thought was, well, that's a problematic price tag for Trae Young when Joel Embiid is only $300 more expensive. And there's a couple guys that seem to be priced a bit too low. But the way that the position is set up, he still looks fantastic. The problem is there's really only there's 4 options to me at point guard today. Trae Young, Ben Simmons, Mike Conley. No part of that is surprising. we got to know if Mike Conley plays first. But I think Conley, Simmons, Trae Young all have similar odds of being in an optimal lineup just because of the salary differential. Other than that, you kind of got to go to Reggie Jackson if you want to pay down. And I could see some peril in that. You got to allocate 200% of ownership at point guard on FanDuel to somebody. So Trae Young sort of wins by default, even though I think he's a little overpriced. And we don't have all that much value out there today. Today's tough, but Trae Young looks good no matter what.
I think he does as well. The rest of Atlanta becomes interesting too, because, Clint Capella last game was a double-double, but modest one, 5 personal fouls. He has to contend with Joel Embiid. Rebounds can become hard to come by against Embiid and a good enough rebounding Sixers team. Curious where Clint Capella falls into line with the other centers on this slate, because again, only 2 games, but you have Embiid against Atlanta and clearly wasn't 100%, but still dropped 39 in 38 minutes. Just another phenomenal performance, 14 for 15 from 3. He will beat the shit out of you. And Clint Capella is going to have to contend with that. You'd rather there's only a few other centers you'd want trying to defend Joel. I get that, but it's still not an easy task. Foul trouble is a possibility. But what about the depth of the center position when it comes to Capella? Does that make him more or less interesting for you?
So I think he's the best option on FanDuel because he's 7,600, and I think he's just a little bit easier to get to. And you only really have 3 choices unless you're trying to punt the position fully. It's Embiid, Gobert, Capella. You don't really like it's going to be hard to justify Dwight Howard, Zubac, Derek Favors, Okongwu. So I do like Capella because I'd rather just have the salary and pay up elsewhere. On DraftKings, though, I don't even think he's the best center on his own team. I'd be more interested in getting to someone like John Collins, who's only 5,600 on DK today. I like that price. He played more in game 1 than I was expecting him to play, 34 minutes. I didn't even give him 34 minutes today. I gave him 32. He's actually the guy that grades out as my favorite play from the Hawks. Still been around a fantasy point per minute over the last 30 days, 0.95. To me, that's enough if he's playing north of 30 minutes that I would rather go to John Collins over Clint Capella on DK.
Collins was draining threes. He only attempted 4 of them, but he was 3 for 4, rained them down in clutch spots. I mean, there were some big shots from him in that game. I'm wondering if that had anything to do with McMillan giving him more run, but at this point, it really doesn't matter. Are you projecting him for what, 32 minutes again, or 32 minutes today after 34? I would assume 32 seems reasonable.
Yep, 32.
Yep, makes sense to me. Now, here's the crazy part, right? Like this is where it gets wild. Let's do this first. Is there anyone else in the starting lineup you want to hit on?
I mean, like Bogdan Bogdanovic looks good across both sites. He's certainly a guy you roster in, 30 to 40% of your lineups. Classic 2-game starter that is good, like volume. He's priced appropriately. I like going there. DeAndre Hunter, we kind of have to dig into because we don't know if he's going to be playing. If he plays, I like him. I like him a lot on DraftKings in particular at 4,100. He becomes one of my favorite plays, oddly enough. He was my number 2 contender. The question mark is, does he play? If he plays, I think he plays a lot. If he doesn't play, you bump up Solomon Hill's minutes, which is basically worthless. I think Kevin Huerter sees an extra 2 minutes or so. Maybe Gallo gets a bit more run than he got out of this last game because he only played 18 minutes. I don't know if it matters all that much to the rest of the Hawks if Hunter isn't there, but if he is there, I do like him as a value option. Okay, so here's what I'm thinking, right? Last game, I think you and I actually talked about this on yesterday's strategy show. The 76ers were competitive in the first quarter. The third quarter was just pretty much an EKG if you're looking at popcorn machine. Shout out to our boy Gundacker because he used that phrase once and I thought it was great. He's like, I'm a GPP player. I just want to EKG my way along until I hit one. I thought I like that. I never heard that before. And then in the fourth quarter, the Sixers were clearly the better team. But it was the end of the first into the second where the bench gave them that insane 26-point lead, right? Lou Williams with 8 points in only a few minutes. Danilo Gallinari had a few. It wasn't anybody specific, but the bench just absolutely routed the 76ers. The question, though, and the problem with this, though, Josh, is like outside of Kevin Huerter, who closed that game out and played the entire fourth quarter,
who on the bench even gets enough minutes for this to be viable? Even though they played so well, they didn't get any minutes.
To me, Herter's the only answer that you can get to. And I'm not entirely sure that matters all that much, especially if Hunter is in. I mean, if Hunter is out, then, I mean, Solomon Hill is going to be a starter in theory, which opens up a potential bench option. But I don't want any part of the ass end of the Hawks today. I think it's starters only, given the minutes that are going to be coming out of here. Maybe you could talk yourself into a little bit of Gallo, but again, if he's only going to play 18 minutes, it might not be the best spot in the world.
I'm with you in this one. And I think at this rate, you're not running. They played that well and still only played that many minutes. That should tell you all you need to know. Right.
By the way, I have the advanced box score up from the first game. NBA.com tracks matchups based on like whoever is the closest defender when, you know, some event happens. Danny Green guarded Trae Young for basically 50% of the time on the floor, 71% of the defensive time. He had 19 points while Danny Green was the primary defender. But he was 7 of 7 from the line. And I think that's a little interesting. Like 5 of 9 from the field, 2 of 4 from 3. Like he was cooking Danny Green and beating Danny Green. I think the 7 for 7 from the line skews it a little bit, makes it look a little bit more extreme than it was, because we do know that Trae Young was negative for the game. I wouldn't be surprised if they don't make any major changes for today.
The Sixers?
Yeah.
You know, Doc Rivers has to be held responsible in some sense for the fact that he didn't even try to make adjustments until the second half.
Yeah.
You're right. Like if you're looking at the advanced box score, yeah, sure. I hear you on that, right? I do. But Trae Young was also one of the reasons that he still dropped 39. Like you can't allow him to drop 39 or 36, whatever it was. Was it 39? Yeah. I don't know. 38.
A bunch.
The thing is, if he's minus 11,
something in that neighborhood.
Okay, let's just assume that's the case. Does that not mean that he still didn't hurt you at times and put you in a position that was kind of insurmountable and that maybe there are better options? Or do you think Danny Green in the starting lineup and the way that they had the starting lineup is the right way?
I don't know if it's the right way, but and look, I don't want to read into just one box score either.
Sure.
Thibault is the guy that guarded him the second most. Trae Young had 11 points on Thibault, 4 of 6 from the field, 2 of 2 from the line. Like it's the same sort. Like he had a better shooting percentage against Thibault than he did against Danny Green. He just happened to shoot less free throws because he drew 3 shooting fouls. I wouldn't be surprised if they just went back to their standard issue plan of guarding him. I think we still see a lot of Danny Green, maybe a little bit more switching on the outside, but it would surprise me more if they made a wholesale change right out of the gate.
Okay. I'm fine with that line of thinking because it's one game. And there's also the fact that Doc's like, all right, what we did in the second half worked, right?
Yeah. With
the same starting lineup, just different configuration in terms of who's taking care of Trae. So I think you could see that, but I would be shocked if Danny Green is exclusively guarding Trae Young out of the gate.
So what's the switch you think is being made?
Simmons.
Really?
Why not? Tell me why not.
So then let's walk through the rest of this.
Let's walk through it because I've done it, and I think I don't think it's crazy.
So obviously Harris, Collins, Capella, Embiid. That one sorts itself out.
And who gives a shit about Solomon Hill?
Right. So Solomon Hill is getting Danny Green in that scenario then?
Well, hold on. You said Capella, Embiid.
Yeah.
Collins, Harris.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
And then put Seth Curry on Solomon Hill for all I care. I mean,
okay.
Right. Like I get that. I'm assuming that Solomon Hill's got some height on him, but I'll give Solomon Hill a contested 3 from a smaller player all day before I want Danny Green back on Trae, because I would rather a bad matchup be on a worse player than a bad matchup on a good player and have all of the other matchups align perfectly. That's kind of what I'm saying here.
So then that we would be going Danny Green on Bogdanovic.
Yeah. And Bogdanovic is a good player, but he's not a killer like Trey.
Right.
I don't think it's a crazy idea.
Ben Simmons played the primary amount of minutes on Bogdanovic in game 1. Bogdanovic had 11 when Simmons was the closest defender, 4 of 6 from the field, 3 of 5 from 3.
Yeah. Bogdanovic was knocking him down. Granted, a lot of those were contested shots that he just couldn't miss. But
yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if they do nothing.
We'll see. At least early on, maybe you're right, and then make adjustments. But you can't dig yourself into another hole like that. And I don't think they will, but it was bad. I think Sixers first quarter is a nice bet too. Even if they end up losing this game, like Sixers first quarter could be a good one. I'm assuming right now they're probably like Sixers -1 and probably -2 first quarter.
Let's say this series goes wrong for you. Philly loses. Mm-hmm. What is your outlook for this team next year?
See, the Sixers don't have that same luxury, like you said, of being a Milwaukee team where it's like, well, we're competitors each year. It doesn't work like that, right? And I heard a guy on the radio, on Philly sports radio. Sports radio is huge in Philly. The other day I heard him talking about, I think this fan base is just happy with competing each year and it doesn't matter how far they go. And I'm like, bro, how bad?
He must have just moved to Philly.
Right, exactly. And he hasn't, though. He's been around for a while. It's like, is your finger so far off the pulse of Philadelphia sports that you think they're just okay competing? Bro, they booed after the first half in game 1. What do you mean they're okay with just being competitive? That's the most preposterous thing I've ever heard in my life. That's not true. That's not true. You grew up semi-close to the area.
Yeah, I mean, Philly fans would look back a lot differently on Donovan McNabb if that was true, but they hated Donovan McNabb because he couldn't simply win a Super Bowl, something that was not all that frequently happening for Philadelphia. Back to back, I believe, NFC title games. Maybe was it 4 straight potentially, something in that neighborhood.
It was like it was
3 of 4, 4 of 5.
It was a crazy run there for sure.
Yeah, no, they're not happy with being the bridesmaid over and over again.
No.
I'll bet anything on it. Maybe if it's it's just not the case at all.
No, I think
it never has been. Never has been. There's no chance that it is. I don't think that there's been so much migration of like soft-minded people to the city of Philadelphia that have been changing the perception of this. But not Philly. They're like the one team I'd be like, that's an impossible thing to say.
It's never okay. And that's the thing. So I don't know what would happen. I think they are a good basketball team. Like I really do. I love Seth Curry. I really do. I think Seth Curry is a difference maker in spots. Why do you laugh?
You mean you wouldn't want to undo that Josh Richardson trade?
Oh God, I know. If you forget where it came from, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like Seth Curry is a massive addition to this team, given what we gave up for him. And I remember people being like, oh God, the Sixers got robbed. And as that happened, I'm like, yeah, who wants the second best three-point shooter in the history of the NBA? Second most accurate three-point shooter in the history of the NBA.
If you knew, guaranteed, you're not winning the title this year, would you rather go the whole distance or lose right now?
So go to the finals or lose right now?
Yeah, I guess what I'm saying is,
Definitely
what do you
finals.
think would trigger Daryl Morey to make a legitimate change that you want? Because Daryl Morey is not going to just sit back and be like passable.
No,
if
not
he
at all.
sees something that he can do, he'll ship out anything that isn't nailed down.
Dude, he just tampered and got fined $75,000. Of course,
so dumb.
Listen, we all know what he meant.
Yeah. But yeah, and it also shouldn't be tampering.
I know it's silly, right? But I love how he responded to his own tweet with like, guys, calm down. All I was saying that it's great that his brother's in Philly. And I'm thinking that is not what you were saying at all. Like, I love Daryl Morey. I think this is a Sixers team that was like the biggest disappointment in recent history last season. I've been calling for Brett Brown's head for a while now, but not only that, they got swept in the first round, Josh. I mean, they were a huge, huge disappointment. Now they come in, they take the first seed, and I would rather them go to the finals because I think one way or another, Daryl Morey is going to make offseason adjustments anyway if they don't win at all. That's the way I would put it.
I'm fascinated by what they do just because Daryl Morey doesn't give a shit. Like he's going to do whatever he thinks is best no matter what.
I'm just not a big Tobias guy, honestly.
Could they ever I know what the answer is going to be. Could they ever trade Joel Embiid?
I would really hope not. I would hope not. Dude, if you put, I would hope they don't. No, I would hope they didn't.
Okay.
I don't think Joel Embiid in any shape or form is the problem for anything. Like, I don't.
I think the ambiguity of his health is the problem.
Sure. But
yeah, just to be clear here, he is the ceiling play for him, for Philadelphia. He is what unlocks the title.
Exactly.
If it exists.
If I'll tell you what, the injury history is concerning, but I'm telling you right now that if that were game 7 in Washington and he got hurt in game 6, he would have played in game 7.
Oh, I'm looking at it from a different perspective. What if during the offseason we find out that meniscus tear is slightly worse than it is, and now he's doing a meniscus repair in the summer. He's going to be late back into the season. He is now eligible. I believe when this season ends, he is now eligible for an extension on top of that deal that he signed 2 years ago. Do you cut that check?
I don't know. I don't think it's going to happen.
That's a real legitimate decision that they have to make coming up. If Joel Embiid comes into the office and says, I am eligible for blah, blah, blah max extension where we tack on however many years, 3 more years, 40 something per year. He's a 26-year-old center that was arguably the MVP so long as he didn't have to sit. He's got 2 more years left on that deal. They tack on 2 more after that. Can you do that? Can you lock him in 4 years, $200 million till age 30 right now?
I'd be scared to, but I'd be scared to.
I don't know how you don't.
Yeah, right. Well, that's kind of the thing though, right? Like, go back and look at Ryan Howard and so many other players. It's like,
that contract was bad the moment he signed it. You check the receipts on my Twitter. I laughed about that nonsense the day that it happened. I couldn't have been happier.
No doubt about it. But there is a part of me that, first of all, the Phillies organization made some horrible signings around that time. But let me get back on track here. While we're on the subject of Joel Embiid, what do you do with him tonight? Like I said, he's questionable with this knee, but he played 38 minutes. If you watched him early on, lateral movement wasn't great. He looked a little bit slower, but then he loosened up, it seemed, and was just once again unstoppable, making some of the most he made shots on drives to the basket that no other player in this league is making of his size in that game alone. Yeah. He had 39, 9, and 4 with 3 blocks and a steal. He had a phenomenal game from top to bottom. If he plays, I'm not worried about his health. He's $10,000. I know Clint Capella is a good defender, but that didn't mean a damn thing last time out. Where do we go with Embiid tonight?
I wish I had a concept of what I wanted to do with this dude. Just given what he did in game 1, in minutes that I didn't think that he was going to play or could play, I guess I'd say I'm relatively neutral on him, at least from a Draftkings perspective, because I do think a balanced build is a little easier. So it's not that I think that John Collins outscores Joel Embiid, but I do think he's more frequently in an optimal as a center. I do have Embiid ahead of both Gobert and Capella. So if that's the easiest way that we look at this conversation, I think that Embiid is the best center option on Draftkings of the 3 legitimate main centers that exist. I would get to Embiid more than I would get to Gobert or Capella. On FanDuel, I think it's a little bit easier to get to Capella since you can only roster 1 center. You save almost $3,000 in salary. It allows you to pay up at all other positions. That becomes a little bit easier. But I do have Embiid quite a bit ahead of Rudy Gobert. I would say that Joel Embiid is still a monster priority for me. Look, Capella, I have in 37% of lineups. Embiid, I have in 30. That's 67% of my center exposure. You tack 19 more on for Rudy Gobert. To me, they're the only 3 options you're really getting to at center. I would say Embiid is my second best option there. But you tell me that he comes out here and drops 38, 18, and however many steals and blocks, and I would believe it. It wouldn't shock me at all if he wrecks Atlanta. But there's also the downside that he plays 6 minutes because his knee flares up.
Yeah.
Scary.
But I don't think he will. It's possible, but I don't think he will. And in the postseason this year, right, because let's not forget Joel Embiid has played he started 5 games. He's started and finished 4, but he's been involved in 2 blowouts. He's averaging 1.63 DraftKings points per minute. Okay. In that game he got hurt, he was averaging 2 fantasy points per minute. He's been really, really, really good. 1.63 DraftKings points per minute, 34% usage, rebounding rate of 16.6%. He's blocking shots. He does it all. I think at $10,000, you just have to take the risk regardless of what his injury status is and knowing that he's got that minor meniscus tear. I think you just have to do it.
74% true shooting in the playoffs so far.
Amazing. What's his free throw percentage?
90.5.
I mean, come on. Like,
he's shooting 44% from 3. I mean, like,
he's a big man that can draw a ton of fouls, but make all of his free throws. There's just, he has a lot of those qualities that you couldn't even think up in someone of his size. So I think you got to go back to the well with Embiid. What's actually to me almost more interesting is where do you go with guys like Harris and Simmons?
I mean, I go aggressive. Ooh, we got ownership. Let me grab this because I want to make sure I'm getting my comparisons right. I love Tobias Harris today on both sites. He appears to be picking up the ownership that I was expecting. Joel Embiid, by the way, the chalk play of the day on DraftKings. Not entirely sure I agree with that. I do, however, like Tobias Harris is projected for 47% ownership on FanDuel. I'm planning to get to more given the makeup of the position. I like him more than the 30% he's getting on DraftKings. I think Seth Curry probably going a little bit underrepresented on DK as well, even though he is 5K. I think that salary is still fine for him in this spot. I'm nervous about that Embiid ownership. Embiid might be my fade today.
All right. So Embiid is the fade I don't want to use the word or the phrase in hopes, right? But with the possibility that this injury could flare up and then you're wiping out 40 to 50% of the field.
Yeah, I think so. I'm just trying to look at it I'm looking at all the centers together right now just to get an idea of who is the person that's coming in under owned, because I think that's really the distinction. Okay, so in my data, this is coming down to a John Collins versus Joel Embiid decision. Embiid is picking up a lot of ownership. John Collins is picking up a lot less than I would expect, which means that I have the ability to pay up elsewhere outside of the center spot if I'm not getting to Embiid. So I would be able to get to more Trae Young. Who else am I missing that's highly priced? More Tobias Harris in this case, which I don't necessarily mind. More Bogdanovich at 6,800. More Paul George. No part of this makes me feel good, because I think that Embiid could absolutely wreck them today.
Dude, I just have such a tough. Would you agree with this? If Joel Embiid doesn't play or ends up leaving this game, it's because he actually can't play.
Yeah, 100%.
Right. Like he was quoted saying, "I'm going to keep pushing until I can't." Now, if you want to talk about future, like if that's good long-term, I'm not in the business of debating that. I'm not a medical professional, but it tells me that like this guy's going to be out there no matter what, unless he really can't. So we'll see. We'll see. Wrap up the Sixers for me. Anything else you find interesting here? Any other guys getting enough minutes to be viable on a 2-gamer in the playoffs?
I think Danny Green's pretty neutral across both sites. I'd be willing to take a shot at at Matisse Thybulle, 3,200 on DraftKings. If you think that he's going to get out there and play a little bit more defense, I think he's basically neutral owned as of right now. Yes, I understand, guys. Multiple people now being like, "Well, he played 38 minutes. They must have fixed his knee at the end of that game. He must not be hurt now."
He did it on a torn meniscus is the issue. It's like we don't know how he'll respond to that.
We can't assume that he's just 100%. By the way, he played those 38 minutes in a loss, so
he's not 100%. We know that. You can't be 100% with this injury.
It leaves me mildly nervous for Joel Embiid if he's already picking up the most ownership of anybody on DraftKings. That is a scary proposition to me. I don't think that's a crazy take. I know what you're laughing at. That's for sure. It took you long enough to get to it.
Jordan, it's not about you. Don't worry.
Yeah, don't worry, buddy. Not you this time. Was you yesterday, though. Although at least I wasn't the person to tell you on the stream.
Did Spag say it on stream? All right. Oh, okay. Yeah.
You didn't think it was Biden?
He wasn't talking about Trump.
Kamala Harris.
Yeah.
I don't see much else for Philly. Harris is my favorite option. Seth Curry would be my number 2. I think Simmons is properly owned, and I'm nervous about Joel Embiid's ownership.
All right. Well, we got one down, one to go here. Shout out to our sponsor, No House Advantage. By the way, usually I do that at the beginning of the show, but No House Advantage, phenomenal place to build your bankroll and check out a really cool player prop format, peer-to-peer player prop format, where it's a GPP style. You put your props into a contest lineup in a tournament style, much like any other site, except there's no salaries. There's player props instead. But the good thing about this, the cool thing about this, first is you get a deposit bonus when you sign up using the sign-up code Awesemo, AWESEMO, $20 when you sign up and deposit for the first time. But also we have free tools at Awesemo that are always free. The No House Advantage player prop projections and the No House Advantage optimal lineup tools. Use them to your advantage when you go over there and play at No House Advantage. Last thing, also very important, because all of these things contribute to knowing how to make money at No House Advantage. And that's really what we care about here. Whether it's $100, $1,000, $5,000, whatever it is, build your bankroll up enough to put you in a great position. All of the lines, all of the props over there that come out in the morning, they're static. They do not change. So no matter how much money, how much action moves a line on another book, it does not happen at No House Advantage. So you can pick and choose your spots with discretion, carefully, and build some really, really good lineups. You put the props you're most confident about at the top, they get the most points. The ones you're least confident about at the bottom, throw them in the tournaments, win some money, use the promo code Awesemo, get your free $20 when you sign up, use our tools, and build your bankroll at No House Advantage. It's a great place to do it. Check out the app, download the app, go online, go to nohouseadvantage.com, whatever it is. Check it out. See you over there. Okay.
I gotta say something on this Embiid thing because I feel like people don't understand what comes out of my mouth sometimes.
Go ahead. Well,
if you're playing a cash game, you're probably playing Joel Embiid today. If he's the most owned player on DraftKings, you're not fading him in this situation. Based on everything that I saw, his optimal odds come in less than his ownership. I'm not saying to play 0 Joel Embiid on a 2-game slate. I think that he's in the optimal lineup just over 30% of the time. But I don't need to go to 60% Embiid when I think that I can get 25 to 30 and reallocate elsewhere and pay up everywhere. I can't just roster all 10K guys and just immediately assume that I've cornered the market on all of the best possible plays. It's not a rubber stamp of get away from Joel Embiid at all costs. It's, well, if he's 42, I might have to be at 30. That shouldn't be like as harsh of a decision as people seem to think it is when it gets spoken. I don't know. It's crazy.
I think it makes perfect sense. It does. Let's talk about the Clippers and the Utah Jazz then. The LA Clippers escaped that series against the really against Luka Doncic, right?
Yeah.
It was all Luka, and you gotta love him for it. But you've been saying it. It's not a sustainable way to win. You can't do it. I'm gonna sneeze.
I mean, you can. You just need Kristaps Porzingis to be not Pogoshevsky.
Of course, pogo stick. But what I'm saying is that you couldn't do it in the way that they took them to 7. Like even if you won that series, eventually you run into a team or you run into a spot where Luka, because if Luka doesn't have an exceptional game, you just get crushed.
Yeah, it's weird. Like, I don't think that Dorian Finney-Smith was going to carry them to offensive glory.
No, although he did make some clutch threes last game. It didn't matter, though. So the LA Clippers against the Jazz today are 4-point dogs, 221 total. Now, you have made some statements that you think the Clippers have a chance to go all the way in the West. And I don't think that's a crazy take at all. They are a good team. They have a good roster. And, you know, one thing, when Marcus Morris is actually knocking down threes, when he's actually playing the role that they brought him on to play, that becomes a very dangerous team. And that is not a Marcus Morris that we saw earlier in the series. Things change, man. Players have bad series. And then, you know, let me give you a perfect example, Josh, and then I'll toss it over to you. You can hit on the Clippers. Fred VanVleet in Toronto's finals, the championship season, right? First round, people looked at Fred VanVleet and they're like, get this guy off the floor. He's terrible. Get him off the floor. He sucks. And then it was the second round too against the Sixers. And then Fred VanVleet was one of the integral parts over the final two series in the Eastern Conference Finals and in the finals at getting them that trophy. So players are not the same from series to series always. And you could see Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, and specifically Marcus Morris, who has not played so well. If he starts turning up the heat, this Clippers team becomes even more dangerous.
Yeah, it's almost like if you're not having a good series, you need your wife or significant other to crap out a kid, because that worked really well for Fred VanVleet. So if anybody can quickly impregnate and have a baby immediately in the playoffs, that will be the cure for what ails you.
Is that what everyone said about VanVleet?
He went nuts once he had the baby. That's actually what happened. Obviously, I don't think that there's a lot of correlation to this.
I wonder if it was like a happy nuts or an angry nuts. Like, oh man, look what I've created. He's hideous. Like, how can I live with myself? I'm going to take out my aggression on the rest of the world.
Maybe,
right?
Maybe. I don't know.
It's just a thought.
It seems like that could be true.
Yeah.
I got nothing else to say. I guess I could talk a little bit about the Clippers.
You could do that. Yeah. Because I mean, if I go down this path, people are just going to be like, Laffy, what is wrong with you? You're a disgusting person.
That's true.
Yeah.
So
I am, or that they would say that.
You are, right?
To some extent. Yeah.
So I think my two favorite Clippers are not Paul George and Kawhi. Not that I don't like Paul George and Kawhi. We'll get to
hold
it.
on. I'm sorry. I have no idea if Fred VanVleet's kid is ugly. I've never seen Fred VanVleet's kid, for the record, because someone asked if his baby is. I have no idea what he looks like, or if it's even a boy or a girl. Just it was a hypothetical. Josh, go ahead.
God, can you imagine being born ugly? I can't.
If you were to have a baby with your wife, would you be worried that your kid might be ugly?
George, any responses that I'm about to give to whatever questions are coming, please take me off the screen.
I was 100% where I have been admitted this to everybody. I saw the ultrasound and I was like, oh my God, good thing they don't look like what they do, because she's a beautiful little girl. But I'm not going to lie. When I said, Josh, I'm a little spooked right now. Does that make me a bad person?
No, not at all.
I think it's human nature.
We're not all that far away from being able to just like pick and choose whether they are ugly.
Right. But
like we figured out the ingredients to people, man. We can figure this out in not long, where everybody's coming out looking aces.
Yeah. Game 3 says Josh was not born handsome. Well, I don't have anything's born handsome, but all I'm saying is I think people lie when they say, oh, I never thought about what my baby would look like when he or she is born. Of course you do. I mean, that's human nature. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm just in the minority.
It is a really weird thing, because no one is sitting around thinking like, man, I hope my kid grows up hot.
No. But I do say, I hope my kid grows up not getting picked on in school.
Yeah, I guess you're dreaming like, man, I hope she's really smart and has average looks so that I have to not worry about just a trail of dudes showing up later on in life.
I mean, I've tried to not think about any of that, dude, but like you're going a different direction. What I'm saying is, as a baby, some of these babies. All right, should we go back to the Clippers? Because you put me down a bad path there, and I don't want to think about that.
Reggie Jackson and Marcus Morris are my two favorite Clippers plays for today. Reggie Jackson scares me a little bit. Now that we're moving into a different series, you can kind of play with the guards' minutes a little bit. It wouldn't be surprising to me if they reintegrated Rondo a bit more aggressively, if Terrence Mann did see more time. They started to dust off Luke Kennard towards the end of that Mavs series. So while I gave Reggie Jackson 30 minutes, I do think there's a little bit of downside, but I prefer him to the current ownership that he's getting. Similar story for Marcus Morris, 5,300 on FanDuel, 4,800 on DraftKings, and for some reason only projected for 26% ownership. The question then becomes, does Ivica Zubac start playing more minutes in a situation against Utah, or do the Clippers go the opposite direction, stay small, stretch out Rudy Gobert, and try to win that way? When you get into a new series and you get into a game one, it changes things up a little bit. But right now, I'm pretty pot committed to Reggie Jackson and Marcus Morris.
Marcus Morris is the most interesting one for me because the price is pretty reasonable. He's had a few games where he's, a difference maker at that price point, right? Like already in that last series, he had a couple games where at that price point, he's a difference maker. He's going to get, you hope, enough minutes here. He played 30 last game and then 42 and 42. I like Marcus Morris quite a bit here. How much do you worry about this matchup with Utah? Like, they're not really the same defense as they were. They don't play at that same crawling pace as they've done in the past. And There's only 2 games, so you really can't worry much about it at all, right?
No, I'm not worried about Utah's defense really in any form, not in this matchup.
Yeah, me neither. Anything else for the Clippers?
Look, I like Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. I think they're basically equal on FanDuel because of the positional split, even though Kawhi is so expensive. On DraftKings, where Paul George is $9K and Kawhi is $9,900, I think that they're both pretty much properly owned at about 37%. I don't have a lot of hot takes there. I'm looking to get to the Clippers on the margins. So Reggie Jackson, Marcus Morris, Terrence Mann, I think going a little under-owned. I think Ivica Zubac at 3,500 could be going under-owned. If you want to take a flyer, I think game one's the spot to do it, because if they change it up, everybody will be reactionary in game two. In game one, I think that's the spot where you can say, maybe Zubac just plays 20 minutes today, and this is a slightly different series than what we saw against Dallas. He's projected for 12% ownership. That's one of the spots where I think that you can get different with a reasonable path to success.
Mark Palomino says, hey guys, how do I get Josh's projections on Awesemo? Just watch How to Use NBA Fantasy Cruncher. I understand the site might be a little different. Thanks for the super chat, Mark. We have our projections loaded straight in the Fantasy Cruncher if you have this Fantasy Cruncher add-on through Awesemo. So that's the way to do it. Or you can load your own.
Yes. If we want to be super specific here, my projections are not on the website.
Correct. Yeah.
So the answer is you don't.
But we do have Alex Baker's projections, Awesemo himself. That's not a bad thing. I can assure you of that. Number 1 ranked DFS player in the world. These are the projections that he uses. Ownership projections, player projections, top stack tool, boom or bust tool, optimal lineup percentage, the Fantasy Cruncher add-on, which is huge. The lineup builder for anyone using single, double, 3 max entries, hand building lineups. We got stuff for everybody. If you go to awesemo.com, I just realized that there's a promo code. I don't know how long this has been running, like show specific.
Yeah, it's relatively new.
I just totally forgot about it. And it pisses me off because I know that it would they'd be crushing. But if you want to get 15% off your first month, we have a promo code for this show, NBA Strategy Show, right? So if you use the promo code NBA Strategy Show, all one word, you'll get 15% off your first month. Like I said, all of those tools, everything created and used by Alex Baker himself. Awesemo, number 1 ranked DFS player. And, guys managing him, Steve Buzzard, Sean's on, 2 really, really great players. Steve's always at the top of the leaderboards. So we just have an amazing crew, an amazing team, a ton of pros also in the Slack chat, answering your questions in premium office hours, helping you fix your game. Josh and Steve and Alex and Ben and so many other guys. So Come on over, join the community, join the Slack chat, check out all of the tools. You want to get the Fantasy Cruncher add-on, I would recommend doing that as well if you like playing multiple lineups and learning how to crunch and automate your process. So all of that stuff, awesemo.com/join. Use that promo code NBA Strategy Show when you sign up. 15% off your first month. It's a nice little bargain there for sure. All right. Wrap this one. Oh, and I meant to say, if you want to listen to the show in podcast form, you can do it at any podcast platform. And to win a free month or a free week of Awesemo Plus with everything on the site, just leave a review with your email and your Twitter or your Twitter handle, but it has to be a positive review because otherwise, I mean, that's not fair to us. If you actually like the show, if you don't, you leave it alone and hit that thumbs up here while you're at it. Utah, Josh, let's close this out.
Yeah, so I've got two major plays on FanDuel, both of which are going to be over the ownership. One of them is a question mark. Bojan Bogdanovic at 5,400 because of his price tag to me is going a bit under-owned. I got him in for 33 minutes. The fact that he's 5,400 is just kind of crazy to me, given the makeup of small forward. So I would like to get to Bojan by, I don't know, probably something around 50%, if I'm being honest. And then the real question mark here, do we get Mike Conley in this game? He's 7,500 on FanDuel, 7,300 on DraftKings, was able to get some shots up yesterday from what I understand. I think he's a legitimate question mark today, but if he plays, I'm very interested in getting to Conley, given his current ownership. I think he's getting a little shorted. Maybe that goes up if we know that he is in. I think a lot of Utah is getting over-owned going up against the Clippers, but I really like the Clippers here. I would like to bet on the Clippers. Maybe not necessarily for this game, although that would be fine too, but I like them for the series. So to me, I think Joe Ingles is going over-owned, 4,300 on FanDuel and 4,900 on DraftKings. Now, if Conley is out, Ingles looks great. Jordan Clarkson's going to look a lot better. Things are going to change pretty dramatically. But if Conley is in, I'm not as interested in Ingles. I'm not all that interested in Royce O'Neal, 5,500 and 5,100. I actually think that Derek Favors is mildly sneaky at 3,100 on the Utah side on DK. And that's only in 14 minutes. If there's any sort of like Rudy Gobert foul trouble, Derek Favors could be that benefit. And we just don't have that sort of pay down option that exists today. So don't play them together in the same lineup probably. But Favors in a Rudy Gobert foul trouble game wouldn't be the weirdest thing in the world for me to see.
Top options then from the Jazz. Zinc time.
Zinc time. Mike Conley, if he plays on both sites, Rudy Gobert on both sites, particularly on FanDuel, just because there are only three legitimate centers, you just get to them by default. I think Donovan Mitchell at 9K on FanDuel is probably a bit overpriced. I like him a lot more on DraftKings where he's 8,200. But Conley on both sites, Bojan Bogdanovic on FanDuel, my two favorite things.
All right, Josh, two things to close out the show here. One, Luka Doncic, right?
Yeah.
Who is, and I'm asking chat, I'm asking you. I want to know from chat. I want to know from you in the comments if you're watching this after this. Who is the ideal player to play along Luka Doncic? Now, I'm talking like realistic ideal player. You know, not saying LeBron James or players that there's just no way that they end up in Dallas next year. But the best, most realistic option to play along Luka Doncic next year. And two, Sean Dredd, I meant to address this yesterday, and fortunately, he said it again today. Luka will never win a championship until he learns to play off the ball. Sean, who do you suggest he plays? Who do you suggest he defers to? Dorian Finney-Smith? Who does he defer to? You can't play off the ball when there's nobody that can create their own shot in the offense.
He shouldn't play off the ball because he's one of the best players in the league at having the ball in his hands.
Of course. But if you had like a Damian Lillard on the team, there are times where Luka can play off the ball and you're not like, why is he playing off the ball? If Luka's playing off the ball and Maxi Kleber has it above the break, you know, in the half court, that's a problem.
Yeah. Bradley Beal's going to be a really popular answer here. I think that's slightly too obvious. Sean G, I like that call. Karl Anthony Towns would be super duper interesting. Kind of just like what you wanted Porzingis to be. Cat's
kind of a cool answer.
Yeah.
Kind of like that. I do. I mean, and Minnesota's going nowhere fast. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Anthony Edwards will make a difference, but they still are missing a lot of pieces. I like Cat. That's a good answer.
Yeah, I don't mind that. I don't really have like a legit answer here.
Really? I thought you would. You know contracts better than anybody.
I know, and that just sort of doesn't exist right now. Everybody's kind of set in stone. Like, look, I'm looking at the Dunks and Threes list of EPM. So I'm just going to start reading off the names of in order of how people were basically in plus minus. Jokic, it's not him. Gobert, Curry, LeBron, Kawhi, Embiid, Butler, Lillard, Mike Conley, Giannis, Paul George, Durant. Like, none of those names are actual answers for this. So you start getting into weirder stuff like, would I like to see him on the same court as Zion? Yeah, that'd be awesome. That's clearly not happening anytime soon. Kyrie is not going anywhere. Drew Holiday. Towns is the first one that made some sense to me. And then we start getting into other weird guys like Van Vliet, Zach LaVine, like Ben Simmons. No. I don't really have one. I don't know where he goes for a second banana. Bradley Beal and Cat are the obvious answers of guys that are probably set up nicely to be on different teams in the near future.
Okay. We had a message from our premium Slack chat. Jeremiah Johnson says, CJ McCollum would give Luka the shooter he needs to take the pressure off. I don't think McCollum, if you're talking about someone that isn't a star, but if you had McCollum, how about this? If you had McCollum, do you win that series?
If you just add him to the team?
Just add McCollum to the team. Like, I think you probably do.
So it's hard to say. Look, this is the best way to answer that question. If you add CJ McCollum to the Dallas Mavericks, everyone's going to be like, well, yeah, of course they win. They're still the underdog in that series when the series starts.
I agree. But
so then I don't really have an answer to that. My answer is no, but yes, they're obviously more likely to win that series, but I still think they're the dogs.
Yeah, they're still the underdog, but they also just surprised a ton of people. Granted, they were still 6.5 point dogs in game 7 too. Let's not forget about that. It goes back to Luka not being able to do everything on his own. But I don't think McCollum's the worst answer. Like, if you couldn't land a bona fide star, and it feels like if Portland blows that team up, McCollum might actually be a realistic option.
Jaylen Brown.
Solid defensive player, talented offensive player that I feel is only improving.
The Paul George to his Kawhi Leonard type situation.
That's not bad.
Boston in a little bit of term. I don't think he's going anywhere, but if they're trying to mix something up, they're mixing it up a little bit right now.
I still love the Towns answer because Towns can hit threes too. Like, he can kind of do it all. Versatile player.
Chris Middleton.
I mean, yeah, if you want to lose in 4. All right, so who is it? You're a player. You pick one. We got to do it. You pick one. You have to pick an ideal player. Everyone in chat's done it. Oh, Game Theory says Mario Hezonja. That's a good one. That's hyped something. Up big coming into the league. So is Dragan Bender and so many of these players that just never materialized.
I think Karl Anthony Towns would be really fun.
It would be really fun. I know. It's a great answer. I don't know who said it first, but like that is probably my favorite answer. Luka and Towns would be a pretty fun team to watch. There's no doubt about it.
Towns has shot 40% from 3 for the past 4 years.
40% from 3. I'll take that in a big man all day long. All right, Josh, give me your biggest fade today. It sounded earlier like you were saying it was Joel Embiid. It doesn't mean you're going to have none of them, but it says you do have some reservations about his health. And give me your biggest stand today outside of that. The guy that you like most and probably come in most overweight on.
God, people are going to lose their minds for this.
This isn't anything new.
Biggest stand is John Collins. I just think he's going underrepresented. I think the salary really works, and center is kind of weird, so him having center eligibility helps on DraftKings. Biggest fade is... So, I think Joe Ingles is my biggest fade in terms of guys that I might not end up having any of if Mike Conley ends up in. Joel Embiid is the guy that's going to pick up the most amount of ownership that I ultimately expect to be under the field on. Clearly doesn't feel good.
All right. Well, we got 2 games. This should be fun. And I always welcome the banter over on Twitter. If you don't have Twitter yet, for basketball, it's super important. For DFS, it's really important. In all seriousness, if it wasn't for DFS, I probably wouldn't even have Twitter because I think it's in many cases just toxic and pisses me off. And people are very much willing to say whatever they want and talk shit on any stranger, where in real life, like, you just know that's not happening. You know what I mean? Like you get everyone's a doctor and a scientist and we all source it from the same place, but you know, everyone's a genius on Twitter. Everyone's an asshole and everyone's tough. But for basketball and for sports, generally speaking, outside of some debates, you get to stay away from that stuff. So Twitter for basketball, for sports, is pretty viable. And it's fun just to talk shit with each other and tell them when they're right, when they're wrong. But you know what bothers me the most, Josh? By the way, at Lofty_D, at Josh Engleman, our handles are right below. Hit us up. What bothers me the most is when you make a call on Twitter. You say, like, all right, I like I like this game, I like this spot, whatever. And then the same person or someone waits until after the game to like your tweet or be like, at hot takes exposed or cold takes exposed. I know that guy, so he wouldn't do that to me. But anyway, like, if you have that take, hit me with it before the show, then you can talk or before the game, then you can talk as much shit as you want.
I just don't care about takes. People are stupid and they don't understand that these things aren't binary. I don't care if I'm right. I don't care if I'm wrong. We're not talking about one individual day. Everyone's going to be wrong all the time. Generally speaking, you're not seeing me take victory laps for good takes on Twitter. I'm not going to I don't care about the bad ones either. I do this every single day. I don't care about any of it. I just need to know in the aggregate how that's going. And based on my bankroll, it's going great.
Yeah, sure. Oh, look, I hear you. I'm just saying in general, there are those people that live to just tell you were wrong after the fact.
Those people have never succeeded in their entire lives.
Noel, for DF cards, if I have premium but not premium Slack chat, support@awesemo.com. No, support@awesemo.com. They'll get you into the premium Slack chat. All right, man, I guess that'll do it. But this has been a fun show. 2 games. Stick around. Deeper dive coming up later. Live before lock. The tip-off MLB strategy show going on right now. So head on over there. And throughout the day, what day is it? Tuesday? Today's Tuesday, right? Yeah. Yes. So throughout the day, you've got the PGA strategy. Or no, maybe you don't. Yeah, PGA strategy show with Ben and Jason. MLB deeper dive. All throughout the day, we got shows right here on the largest DFS YouTube platform in the world, Awesemo.com. We'll see you back here next time, friends.